Okay. Move ahead just a little bit. Next, we would like to recognize Representative Marty Halverson. Welcome. First thing we want to do is entertain a motion to approve the September commission meeting minutes.
President, I move that we accept the September commission meeting minutes.
Okay.
I do have a question. Was it Sherry that was here, or were you here? She doesn't list herself on the staff. I didn't see your name listed there. I was just trying to see which of you was here.
Okay. So that's taken care of. We'll need a second.
Second.
You second.
Question, all those in favor? Aye. Okay. We've approved the minutes. Director Talbot.
President, commission, the next agenda item is the Commissioner's report. You should have a copy of this. And again, I'd like to hit some of the highlights of my activities and the department's activities since our last meeting. We have met, I have met several times with the governor and his staff on several issues, issues regarding the delisting of grizzly bears, obviously the wolf issue that came up, issues as far as boreal toads, and also budget issues. Speaking of budget issues, we've met, John Kennedy, Meredith, and myself met with the Commission Budget Committee, which is now Commissioner Price, Commissioner Culver, Commissioner Selmy, and went through the proposal for the FY16 budget and just the guidelines on that as far as what direction the Commission would like to see us move forward. In addition to that, I have visited with the Governor's office regarding the direction that they would like to see the Commission and the Department move forward with the FY15 budget. Since the last Commission meeting, myself and various members of the staff attended Recreation, Wildlife, and Lander. Also attended the Joint Judiciary Committee in Laramie to look at issues that are being addressed by both of those committees. Recall that in Travel, Recreation, and Wildlife, we're looking at refining some of the restitution statutes, and there's a committee bill that will be looking forward on that to address several of the issues as far as wildlife restitution to the state. I had the opportunity, myself and Brian Esnick, to meet with Senator Barrassa's staff in Jackson and discuss a whole gamut of endangered species issues. In addition to that, I've met with several individual legislators since last meeting to discuss various legislative topics. One issue that I would like to report to the Commission is some time ago, the Commission directed the Department to go out and take input on the game bird farms. We're still in the process of doing that, but we have held meetings literally throughout the state, and we're going to take comments for about another week. But right now, we are overwhelmingly hearing strong support for the game bird farm program throughout the state of Wyoming, and I just recently received a strongly supportive letter from the Goshen County Chamber of Commerce. So those meetings have been going very, very well, and I think our comments to this point are 95% in support of that program. Certainly, I'd like to thank those commissioners that have attended those meetings throughout the state. Myself and several members of staff have been very engaged as the sheep interaction working group and activities associated with Region 4 U.S. Forest Service initiating a risk assessment in Region 4, which is basically the Bridger Teton section of Wyoming. There was another meeting that took place last Friday at Park City, Utah, a joint wood growers meeting for the states of Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, and Nevada, and the Forest Service attended that meeting as well. I had the opportunity to meet with all of our and East specialists in Casper and provide an introduction with Randy McKay there. I attended the Casper all-regional meeting and the Laramie Regional Leadership Team meeting and various other non-department functions such as the One-Shot Antelope Hunt, the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies meeting in St. Louis, Wildlife Foundation in Laramie to discuss future direction and projects and remain very optimistic about our relationship with the foundation. In addition to that, I chaired the Animal Damage Management Board, and as recently as yesterday, attended the Governor's Brucellosis Initiative. Was provided an opportunity to provide a wildlife update to the Wyoming Water Association, and the department continues to enjoy a very positive working relationship with that organization as well. In addition to that, I was asked to be a guest speaker at the Wyoming Collaboration Conference in Casper, and specifically I was asked to speak in regards to the department's role in our work with collaborative efforts with the Wyoming Regional Project and Flat Valley Water Project, and you certainly saw the results of the Flat Valley this morning when 80% of those projects that we're moving that project forward. The efforts on behalf of the department and employees of the department landed us a very respected seat in the world of collaboration, and there's a lot of folks that are looking at those efforts and very interested in that. Another issue that has provided significant guidance for the agency since our last meeting is meeting with Grand Teton National Park, and we have been attempting to resolve some jurisdictional issues with the park in regards to private animals within the exterior boundaries of Grand Teton, and we're working through that, and it appears at this point that the Wyoming Game and Fish Department will have authority on wildlife issues on those private lands. And with that, I think that hits the highlights. If you have any questions, certainly.
Question for the director.
On the game birds, you say we have overwhelming support for the continuing the game birds. This is public support for the people that are interested in it. Where are we going to be able to get the financial support? Are we going to be able to get that?
Charles, Mr. President, Commissioner Price, I think that I'm optimistic that we can, especially with the public support that has been expressed at this point. I think yourself and other commissioners have mentioned in the past that the price of the special management stand for elk and for the bird program are something that we need to look at, and I think that those would be good interim topics for travel, recreation, and wildlife to look at during the next session of the legislature. And I think that with the public engagement we have right now, there will be some momentum, if you will, to at least look at that. We're planning on bringing Wildlife Division will bring a full report on the timber farms to the commission in January, and then we can move forward.
So we'll have that before the legislature convenes then.
Mr. President,
right in that period.
Right in that period.
It's not before it convenes. Okay, because I think that's one of the important things that when we started out on this, was the big discrepancy in the cost of those forms versus how much the licenses were bringing in.
That's correct, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for the director?
Thank you.
Mark, is Andrew here? Oh, okay. What? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, we'll do,
President Cloud, Commission members, Director Calvert. My pleasure to introduce you to Andrew Nykirk, who's the fisheries biologist here in Sheridan, and one of the waters that he manages. Spends a lot of time on his keyhole, and he's got a great overview. One of our premier sport. Andrew?
Mr. President, Commissioners, Mr. Talbot. I wish I could take credit for what Keyhole has experienced here over the last few years. And I wish I could consider walleye, 13-pound walleye. It's not quite that good, but it's pretty good. One of the reasons we've seen kind of a resurgence in recent years all comes down to habitat. The drought in the early 2000s, water levels were really low. And since 2003, we've seen an increase in water level, increasing the habitat, increasing the productivity. It's kind of left out there. Keyhole Reservoir is located about 55 miles east of Gillette, 12 miles north of Moorcroft, and the town of Pine Haven sits right in between Mill Creek and Aggie Bay. Brief history here. Keyhole Dam was completed on the 25th of October in 1952. It's owned by the Bureau of Reclamation, but managed by Wyoming State Parks. Water is controlled by the provisions of the Bellfish River Compact, which was confirmed by Congress in 1944 for irrigation to some 63,000 acres. So essentially 10% of the water right belongs to the state of Wyoming, 90% of the water right belongs to the state of South Dakota. And the first fish stock in Keyhole was 1952, 1 month after the dam was completed. And those were 214,000 walleye, and those actually came from the Tin Sleeve hatchery. I really washed out. At full pool, a few tidbits here. Keyhole is 9,400 surface acres, 193,735 acre feet, maximum depth of 83 feet with an average depth of about 21 feet. The Bellfish River Basin above Keyhole covers an area of 1,950 square miles, and the annual precipitation in the gradient is about 17 inches per year. So one thing with Keyhole, being built on the tiny Bellfish River system, the upper Bellfish, water levels within Keyhole are totally dependent on prairie snowpack and spring rains. And in a lot of years, the evaporation rate actually exceeds the inflow. Average inflow in the Bellfish River is 23 cubic feet per second. Some years it doesn't flow at all, depending on our water. Other years, if we get some floods, things like that, the highest recorded flow in the Bellfish River was 10,000 plus CFS. If you can imagine Moorcroft, Wyoming, right there at the rest area, and 10,000 CFS going through that. So with that variable inflow, Keyhole has only been full 3 times in its history. And that was 1978, 1999, and 2012. And it's this recent inflow of water, Mother Nature helping us with rain and snow. We've been keeping water levels full the last 4 years, and things are looking mighty fine right now. Species present within Keyhole, lesser known fish, but slowly becoming more popular is the freshwater drum. The freshwater drum is an accidental introduction from bringing in other fish. They can get the current state record in Keyhole right now at 70 miles. That's the current state record for the state of Wyoming. Anglers are finally starting to take advantage of these. We have plenty of them. They're good white meat, and they're pretty easy to catch. The only native game fish in Keyhole is the channel catfish. These are native to the Bellfish River. They were first stocked in 1957, and they were stocked periodically through 1994. Right now, we have good populations of smallmouth bass. It's a good-sized smallmouth, upwards of 5 pounds, which is pretty impressive. Smallmouth bass have only been stocked 4 times in Keyhole's history: 1970, 71, 93, and 96. And these are pound for pound one of the toughest fighting fish. Keyhole's growing some good right now. Oops. One of my favorite fish, and I personally, that's my father and my mother right there. We personally travel to Keyhole every year to go after black and white crappie, large populations of black and white crappie. These were introduced in Tongue River Reservoir, Montana in 1985 and 1986. A couple other species present within Keyhole are the bluegill, upper left. This was an incidental introduction. They weren't meant to keep the load coming from Oklahoma, I believe, was traveling to East Iron Creek Reservoir. Weather was bad, the road was too muddy to get the stocking truck in there. So instead of just dumping the fish on the side of the road, Bud Stewart, my predecessor, decided to go to them and Keyhole. They don't contribute much to the fishery, but they are there for kids to catch. Most of them end up getting eaten by a walleye. Green sunfish. We don't actually have any stocking records of green sunfish for Keyhole, so we think probably an upstream source had some in the pond, they got out, bait bucket introduction or an accidental introduction from bringing in other fish. Yellow perch in recent years have increased in numbers and in size and are specifically targeted more so during ice fishing season. These were actually introduced from Lake DeSmet right up the road in 1982, a one-time introduction. But the bread and butter of Keyhole, what most anglers go after are the walleye and the northern pike. Certainly 99% of the people are targeting walleye or pike when they go to Keyhole. Real quick, we do have 11 non-game species of fish present within Keyhole, and those include the flathead chub, northern red horse, river carp sucker, sand shiner, white sucker, fathead minnow, plains minnow, red shiner, spot-tailed shiner, emerald shiner, and unfortunately a very high population of common carp. When it comes to walleye, we stock these annually at fingerling size, so about an inch, inch and a half in length, at between 20 to 50 foot surface area, and depending on Keyhole's surface acreage, kind of dictates how many we stock. Usually somewhere between 160 and 250,000 walleye fingerlings per year. And that just is based on what the water levels are going to look like. Northern pike, these were illegally introduced, and they were discovered in 1970 in Keyhole. We did not originally put those in there, but in 1972 we started a northern pike stocking program, and have been stocked annually ever since 1972. And the average number of northern pike stocked annually is about 150,000 fish. But with Keyhole's resurgence and the increased water levels, the last stocking of northern pike that we did was 2012. We actually canceled stocking of pike in the short term because we just had a boom of year. We have so many northern pike in Keyhole right now, it's not even funny. We don't want them to put a hurting on the walleye. We want pike to be kind of the unique trophy type of fish for anglers to catch. We do hope that they bring on the carp, that we don't want to keep their numbers fairly high. But what we usually see on a typical year, we get 150,000 pike. In our sampling, we might catch 8 to 10. The last 2 years, we're catching more like 30, 40, 50 northern pike. So that's a pretty good indication that we've got a lot of northern pike. Both walleye and northern pike come from Garrison Fish Hatchery in Pixon, North Dakota. Our fish culture personnel, they travel up there with their Pan Axle semis, bring back the walleye and northern pike for us, and they do a great job. And I'd like to say thanks to those guys for doing that for us for all these years. So with all these teeth, all these game fish present within Keyhole, it was discovered pretty much by Bud's predecessor that stocking forage is an important component to this fishery to keep good quality game fish within Keyhole. So in 1978 to 1980, we stocked spot-tailed shiners, and in 1984 stocked emerald shiners. These fish generally average 2 to 3 inches, but they can get 4 to 4.5, 5 inches. And they provide good forage for game fish within Keyhole. These fish, however, do fluctuate widely on their population based on how many game fish are present within Keyhole and based on the population of the next forage fish, which is the gizzard shad. Gizzard shad have been introduced as forage in 1979. There's probably not a better forage fish for Keyhole and for Glendale Reservoir as well. Gizzard shad can spawn multiple times in the summer and provide literally hundreds of thousands of forage fish for game fish. The other benefit of gizzard shad, very few adults can make these hundreds of thousands of prey base. The last 2 years, 3 years, we've only moved 250 adults to create all these game fish because they can spawn 2 to 3 times a summer. Gizzard shad act as a buffer as well. So when you have a plethora of gizzard shad to eat for the walleye pike, that takes the pressure off the spot-tail shiner, the emerald shiner, young crappie, young perch, young smallmouth bass. It improves those populations as well. Because gizzard shad spawn multiple times in the summer, you have various sizes of gizzard shad throughout the summer. So you might, by October, have a 7 or 8 inch shad, which might be conducive for a northern pike meal, or you might have a 3 or 4 inch gizzard shad by August for a crappie or a smallmouth or a walleye. And at Wyoming's high elevation, this is a bonus here for us. If you become more populated, gizzard shad do not like super cold water. The literature says that 70 to 80 days of ice coverage are going to winter kill. So in Keyhole, they rarely overwinter. We've only had 2006, 2007 they overwintered, but by 2008 they were all gone. So they don't become overpopulated like they do in other states, especially in the South. You can read a lot of stuff down there where gizzard shad just become overpopulated and they dominate the fishery. So that's a gizzard shad about 4 3/4 inch long. They like I said, they generally winter kill within Keyhole, requiring annual stocking. Our previous sources, back in the day, North Platte reservoirs in North Platte, Nebraska. These reservoirs have since been contaminated with an AIS and Asian clam. So we went several years without stocking any gizzard shad in Keyhole because we didn't have a clean source. After discussing with fish staff, we decided to Glendale, because they generally get an overwintering population of gizzard shad. We deemed us to be clean. In the last 2012-13, we moved about 500 total gizzard shad from Glendale to Keyhole. But in 2014, we did not stock gizzard shad because we couldn't find them in Glendale. So most of them winter killed last winter in Glendale as well. So a new source, and that's going to be a topic of discussion in the future for us, is where do we find that clean source to provide this good forage for game fish within Keyhole. Some of our management objectives, we manage as a basic yield fishery for walleye and northern pike, and all that really means is we stock those fish on an annual basis. For the most part, especially in low water, less habitat available, they do not do very well spawning. When water levels are full, like they are now, they do spawn halfway decent. But for the most part, we have to stock walleye and northern pike in Keyhole. We manage everything else as a wild fishery. All other game fish are wild. After those initial introductions, they've been doing fine on their own. We always keep tabs on this body of water, so if we ever need to do a fusion of crappie or smallmouth bass, we can always do that down the road. And we manage to keep in size northern pike. And northern pike are the only species within Keyhole that have a regulation on it. We have a 30-inch minimum length limit on northern pike. 2 reasons for that. One is to create that trophy type component, something each for anybody, any angler who wants to catch a giant fish. Get that fish to be a little bit bigger. But number 2 is if you get those pike big enough, we hope that they're preying upon the common carp and carp sucker, which are plentiful within Keyhole. And they do put a hurt on the carp, which is a good news. Our other objectives are to gauge penetrating colors, springs, and angler attitudes with drill surveys. We're out there all the time, at a minimum 3 days per month, gathering information from anglers, and we utilize one of those. They're out there more than we are. They're out there almost every weekend for sure. 2 or 3 times during the week usually. We're getting those guys to gather creel information, angler attitudes, catch rates for us as well. So evaluation and sampling. Since I've been here since 2006. Got started in 2007 with sampling keyhole. We've gone to a spring and fall sampling. And the reason for that is we catch different things different times of the year. It's easier to catch northern pike and crappie in April, May, June than it is in August. So that's our primary objective in June or May. Catfish as well. The last couple of years we started to utilize trout lines, where catfish inhabit keyhole is on the upper end of the Belle Fourche in those big giant mud flats on the Belle Fourche arm of a keyhole. Hard to get a big boat in there instead of gill net. We actually have to go with smaller boats, get up in there with trout lines and use cut bait to catch those. Our standard sampling, our long-term data set is August, mid-August. We've been doing that for 20 plus years. That allows us to look at our long-term trends, what every fish species is doing. That's based on our August sample. And we gather information typical of any body of water in the state of Wyoming. We're looking species composition, presence, absence, year class strength, age, growth of the fish. And one thing I really like to look at is what we call relative weight. It is essentially the health of the fish. It's a proportion of the fish's length to his weight. The higher the number, the healthier that fish is. The lower the number might give an indication of lack of forage for that fish group. One little tidbit here, the relative weight when gizzard shad are present within keyhole for walleye is in the high 90s. This last year, it was in the mid 80s. We didn't have gizzard shad, so that could be that's a pretty decent indication of how important gizzard shad are. Show you some of the gear we used. This is all passive gear here. Any net that we said is all passive gear. We rely on the fish to swim into the net to be able to catch it, weigh and measure that fish. So this is a trap net. These are great for pike and crappie in the spring when they're cruising the shorelines. It's also good in our August sample because we catch a lot of small fish, a lot of H0, young ear, or H1 fish. And as the fish is swimming the shoreline, it hits this curtain or the lead line. Well, it can either swim in towards shore and try swimming out deeper water, and it'll try to follow that curtain to swim into deeper water and get caught in this trap. We get a chance to look at that fish. We used what we call an experimental gill net. These nets are 160 foot long by 6 foot tall, and the mesh is random throughout the net. Every 20 feet is a new panel on that net of various net sizes, and it pretty much catches anything that swims in its path, and the name gill net speaks for itself right there. The head of that walleye swam through, and he tried to back out and got his gills caught. And then we also use what we call the young ear gill net. This is the same dimensions, 160 foot long, 6 foot tall, but instead of being different sizes of mesh throughout, this is the same throughout. It's half-inch mesh, and this net is designed to catch small fish only. Specifically, we're looking for small gizzard shad when we have gizzard shad, making sure that they reproduce. And or we're looking for small walleye and other small fish. This is the H1 water perch. And what often happens here, when these small fish get caught in this net, it looks like a pretty easy, tasty meal for a pike or larger walleye. Generally, we get a few that get their teeth caught going after what looks to be an easy meal. This is a picture of the trout lines that we used on the upper end of keyhole this last year. You just tie off a trout line to a tree, put in cut sucker bait on a hook, and we caught several catfish this year doing that. One thing I will say, it's pretty easy to get help whenever we're sampling keyhole. We're out there quite a bit, and Dustin Kirsch, right there, he's one of our Gillette wardens. John Davis, our Moorcroft warden, they're out there all the time helping us out, which is really nice. The type of angler that fishes keyhole range from the novice angler, folks who just hope to catch a fish. And this is pretty typical of Joe Gilbert, Sheridan Regional Wildlife Supervisor. He's kind of the novice angler. If he can catch a fish, he must be doing pretty well right now. And it ranges for the more die-hard, hardcore angler who's out there fishing for walleye or pike, or specifically targeting certain species. They're just not dunking a worm or trolling a crankbait. They're actually specifically targeting something, and they've got that lake figured out. We have a lot of walleye anglers out there. Fishing usually picks up the keyhole around mid-May, and it's pretty good throughout the summer. August is kind of where the doldrums of the summer. Water temperatures are the warmest. Fishing is a little slower then. Walleye fishing at Keyhole is good in May and June, and then again in October, November. Had an awesome fall bite in the last 3 or 4 years out at Keyhole. But probably the best overall fishing at Keyhole for all species, I would have to say, would be the month of June. That's when I personally make my trips out there. Keyhole is pretty neat. It usually holds 3 to 4 walleye tournaments a year, a crappie tournament in the last couple of years, a big ice fishing derby annually, and it's becoming more and more popular. More and more popular for bow fishing for carp. A lot more people are doing that now. So, to gauge angler catch rates and harvest rates and things like that, I mentioned we use spot creel surveys. We're out there at least 3 days a month talking to anglers, seeing what they caught, kept, released. Of the Wyoming anglers, most 72% are from Cameron County, followed by Weston and Corona County. Of the non-resident anglers interviewed, 57% were from South Dakota this last year, followed by Montana, Nebraska, and North Dakota. With Keyhole being right on the South Dakota border, pretty close to it anyway, we do get a pretty big contingent of South Dakota folks that come over to fish. Some other information from this year's creel survey: we interviewed 764 anglers, and they fished for about 4,000 hours, a little over 5 hours a trip. They caught 3,100 fish, 1,870 of which were walleye, and 191 northern pike. And they harvested 950 fish, 714 of which were walleye. So, to keep in perspective, that's just a little snapshot. You know, we were only out there 3 days per month for a total of 15 days, and we got that good information there. There's certainly a lot more people and a lot more hours fished, a lot more effort put in than what we can see, but those creel surveys are a pretty handy tool nonetheless. What we've done in recent years, because Keyhole has large populations of black and white crappie, we've actually used Keyhole as a source water to move crappie within the state. The Casper crews come up the last 2 summers, and we've moved about 2,000 crappie for them to establish in other waters down in the Casper region. We also moved 300-ish, I think, 300 crappie to start a new fishery in Geyer Reservoir there in between Upton and Newcastle. So we've got black crappie and white crappie in that reservoir now as well. And to catch those, we use boat electrofishing or these super giant trap nets. These are 6-foot tall, 8-foot wide. They are quite cumbersome to set and pull, but they do an excellent job in catching crappie. There's about 400 crappie in that one net alone right there. With Keyhole being so close to the border, so many people, so many non-residents, so many Wyoming boaters going elsewhere to fish and coming back into Wyoming, Keyhole is certainly susceptible to AIS introductions. We do have one AIS introduction that is confirmed within Keyhole, and that is the curly-leafed pondweed. It is confirmed in Keyhole. The last 2 years with our AIS technicians running the check stations at the port of entries, they have actually decontaminated and found 7 boats that actually had mussels attached to their boat right there at the Sundance port of entry. So we are certainly at the doorstep. In recent months, Angostura Reservoir in South Dakota, they found quagga mussel veliger DNA in their water samples. That's 140 miles from Keyhole. So Keyhole's certainly susceptible. Our AIS tech crew lead, Gregor Downey, he's doing all he can to prevent any other AIS introductions into Keyhole, so need to keep that in mind. And that's pretty much my presentation. Keyhole has a lot to offer. Everything from the family-type fishery to the die-hard walleye or pike angler who's out there fishing in a tournament and beating in the waves, or you can bring a kid out and catch a whole bunch of crappie and bass in an afternoon. It's a pretty neat reservoir, so glad I get to work there. So I'll take any questions.
Questions or comments for Andrew?
I have a question, President Plowda. Andrew, I'm not familiar much with the warm water species, but is there much catch and release in the warm water species or on Keyhole? The trout, it's pretty common, but I'm wondering about the warm water species?
Yes, President Cloud, Commissioner Price. I actually have some numbers on that. We do see a lot of catch and release. Most anglers during our creel surveys, we don't have a length limit on walleye, but most anglers, based on what we measure from what they've harvested, most anglers institute a 15-inch minimum size limit on their own. So anything smaller than that, they're releasing. Anything super big, they're releasing. In recent years, the mercury advisories have come out, updated mercury advisories, and large walleye within keyhole are fairly hot for mercury. The word has gotten out on that to maybe not eat that 30-inch walleye in that first slide, but the eaters are your 15 to 18 inchers. So a lot of anglers do catch and release, if I can find that really quick. Sorry about that. So out of 3,700 fish caught, they harvested 1,150 fish. 2,150 walleye were caught. They only harvested 853 walleye. So there is a pretty decent contingent of catch and release. Crappie, most folks are looking for that 9 to 10 inch crappie or bigger. Most perch, people are looking for an 8.5 to 9 inch perch. If it's smaller than that, they're releasing them. So yeah, it all kind of depends on what you catch, but there is quite a few people who practice catch and release.
Thank you. I'm just curious because trout, it's pretty high.
And certainly the northern pike with that 30-inch minimum length limit. If it's under 30, they're forced to release it. We don't see too much harvest on northern pike. Most people, even if it's over 30 inches, they're releasing them anyway.
Thank you.
Very interesting presentation.
Thank you.
Andrew, I enjoyed it. I had no idea, to be honest with you, I had no idea of the diversity of the fish in that lake. So what's the source of the shiners? Where do we get those?
The shiners were a one-time introduction or two-time introduction back in the 80s. I'm not 100% sure of where the emerald and spot-tailed shiners came from. The gizzard shad originally came from reservoirs around North Platte, Nebraska, and then since then have come from Glendo Reservoir. But with Glendo mostly winter killing, with their gizzard shad last winter, we didn't have enough to move this year, and Glendo may have to have an infusion of gizzard shad again so that we can take from Glendo again. So we'll have to look for a new source somewhere. Where the talk is right now, possibly somewhere in South Dakota, or maybe even somewhere in Colorado. But the work will have to go into to make sure that that water is clean, that those fish are clean. It'll probably have to pass the disease test and certifications there before we can bring them back into Wyoming.
Interesting. So the gizzard shad, do you think there is an opportunity for us to produce those somewhere in Wyoming?
President Cloud, Commissioner Couple, Glendo generally, it's had a really good run of being able to overwinter. Yeah. It's about every 10 to 12 years the gizzard shad tend to winter kill in Glendo. It just depends on the winter. Glendo, for the fact that they have the North Platte River feeding it, helps keep that upper end warmer. It doesn't have the ice coverage for as long a time as, say, Keyhole does. But we are kind of looking at possibly Geyer Reservoir there in Newcastle because it's fed from a Madison well, that warmer water, to have our own in-state source so that if something like this does happen.
If we had a warm water source, particularly with a deep water artesian well like Geyer's.
Yeah, Geyer to my knowledge.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything else in the, throughout the state that might work as well. But Geyer certainly is a possibility. The only issue we got to be careful of is that they don't overpopulate themselves. That is one of the advantages there. Even at Glendo, you have several that overwinter, but most of those do end up dying. We keep enough that we can have enough to take the Keyhole. There's enough there left for Glendo. And even in certain years, 2005, 6, and 7, they overwintered in Keyhole. And one trip in particular, we were doing some nighttime electrofishing, didn't even have the electricity going. We were just going from one spot to another with the lights on, and they were porpoising like dolphins. So they can overpopulate. given the right conditions. Luckily, we don't seem to see that too often. So,
Anything else for Andrew?
Very interesting.
The Anglers of Wyoming, thank you
thank you.
for
Appreciate
your
it.
efforts.
I didn't know they weren't trout in that lake. There's a mammal trout up there. I didn't.
Commissioner President Cloutta, Commissioners, Director Talbot will now go back to agenda item number 12, damage claim appeal.
Scott?
This is going to be by call, so we're going to have to make a connection first. So we'll hold on. We'll see if we can get Mr. Patton on the phone, and then we'll proceed.
Are we going to introduce Abigail also?
Yes, I will do all that after I get everybody on, so everybody knows who's all here.
Okay. Are you going to explain the bills first? We go second.
I just can't remember her name.
Hello. Hello.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Hi, this is Scott Edward with Game and Fish. We're about to address your damage claim appeal. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. What's going to happen here first is I'll set the ground rules, do some introductions, and then go from there. Who we have here today, Mr. Patton, is the Wyoming Game and Fish Commission, which is represented by 4 individuals today. Director Scott Talbot. We have myself, Scott Edberg, who I'm the Deputy Chief of the Wildlife Division, who will be presenting the initial parts of this claim. Troy Ochterhoff, the Newcastle Game Warden, who has been working with you on your damage claim. We have Matthias Sayre, who was from the Attorney General's office, who will be representing the Wyoming Game and Fish Commission. And then we have Abby Bodwines, who is the department AG rep. And for the commission, those who have not met Abby, you want to kind of, that's Abby. So, Mr. Patton, what will happen is here I will set the kind of the opening remarks, and then I will ask you to please present your case, so to speak, of the claim. Troy, and then the commission may have questions for you regarding your presentation. Troy Ochterhoff, the Newcastle Game Warden, will then present the department's recommendation of the claim. And then they will, commission may ask him questions, and then it'll kind of be an open session for the commissioners maybe to follow up on anything. And then the commission will make a motion, discuss, and then take a vote. Before we start, do you have any questions?
No, not really.
Okay. So, Commissioners, Commissioner President Cloutta, Commissioners, Director Talbot, we're here today to address damage claim appeal 15006, which involves Mr. Dennis Patton, Patton Land and Livestock, in the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. Mr. Patton submitted a damage claim in the amount of $5,000 that is broken out into 2 items. $2,200 claimed for damage to a swather by elk antlers, fuel cost, and his time and labor. Additional $2,800 for damage by elk to his growing alfalfa grass mix. Upon investigation by the department, it's the department's recommendation that we deny the total payment of $5,000 for 2 reasons. Reason number 1 being, as per Chapter 32 Wyoming Game and Fish Commission regulation, damage to his alleged damage to a swather by the elk antlers, along with the fuel costs and additional time and labor, are considered consequential damages, and as such, the department is not responsible for paying those damages. $2,800 claimed for damage to his growing alfalfa grass mix. Again, as per Chapter 32 regulation, the department was unable to investigate those damages, so as such, the department recommended to deny that claim as well. So in total, the department has made the recommendation to deny the total claim of $5,000 based on adhering to the Chapter 32 regulations. Upon the end of this appeal process, the commission has 3 options. They can approve the recommendation of the department, which is to deny. They can modify the department's recommendation to deny, or they can reverse the department's recommendation to deny. So before we start with Mr. Patton's information, does the commission have any questions on the claim or the process?
I think we're good to go.
No, I don't.
At this time, Mr. Patton, if you would like to please present your side of the appeal to the commission members, and you just speak loud. We do have you on some speakers, but if you could speak fairly loud so we can make sure we understand exactly what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the only thing I really got to say is we had a problem up there, and I called right just when I saw the problem, just kept cutting hay, and in my own mind, I know the elk is in there. They've taken 3 big bulls out of there so far this fall, and really, the Game and Fish, they want to run on all private land, all state land, all federal land, but they don't want to be responsible for their elk. That's the only thing I've really got to say. It's not the money so much, it's the principle of the elk being in there, you know. I mean, we can't go out and shoot them all. I mean, they're going to be there, but I sure won't, I wouldn't go out there and turn a bunch of cows, well, a bunch of cows in my hayfield and then go try to cut it. And if my cows got into someone else's hayfield, I would think that I would be responsible to pay the guy that had them for the damage they did cause. And that's about the only thing I've got to say. I mean, it's just the principle of it. It's you should be responsible for your elk or deer or whatever's in there, you know. I mean, they tear up my fences. I don't say nothing about it. I just go fix the fence, you know. I put some yearlings into a pasture just across the road from them, and 2 days later, the elk went through it, tore it up, and my heifers was gone. I didn't turn in a claim for that. I just went and got my heifers back, but that all takes time, you know. And we do have a big problem with elk up in this country, so whatever you vote, I guess I will accept that. I'm not happy with it, but that's just the way it is. That's about all I got to say.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Patton. Commissioners, do you have any questions of Mr. Patton?
I think I'd like to hear the game warden presentation before I made any comments.
Commissioners, are you prepared for the department presentation on the appeal?
Yes. Yeah.
Could you remind Mr. Patton that he's not going to be able to interrupt the department's presentation, and that if he should find questions along the way, that he might make note of those, because he can then question the department once the department makes a recommendation.
Mr. Patton, were you able to hear Commissioner President Clouda's comment?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'd ask Troy Ockerhoff, the Newcastle Game Warden, to come forward and present the department's presentation on the damage claim.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners, President Clouda, Director Talbot.
Is the volume okay? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to present my investigation report, the department's recommendation as far as the patent damage claim number 15006. Patent Land and Livestock last filed a damage claim in 2012, and the requirements for filing a damage claim have been discussed many times with the claimant, both his son Daniel Patton and Mr. Dennis Patton. And that damage claim in 2012 involved elk as well. It was actually on the same set of fields that we're discussing today. They were a new seeding, a new planting in 2012. Dennis Patton called myself the evening of July 23rd, 2014. I had a voicemail in my answering machine, and I went ahead and called Mr. Patton the following morning on the 24th. And when I discussed the situation with Mr. Patton, he kind of told me what he was dealing with. He was out in his fields currently harvesting the alfalfa grass mix, and wanted me to come out and take a look. So I did that. When I got out in the fields, I met with Mr. Patton, like I said, on the morning of July 24th, and documented what was there, and offered to, later that evening I did call him back and offered to lend my assistance in filling out his affidavit, which he did not require at that time. This is a copy of Mr. Patton's damage affidavit. It says that 70 acres of his hay field had elk tangled up hay, and the elk bedded down in the hay. And Mr. Patton estimated 4% of the 70 acres of hay at a value of $2,800 had been damaged by those bedding elk. So just to restate, when I arrived to meet with Dennis Patton on the 24th, I was not able to investigate the tangled up hay portions of the field because they were already cut by Mr. Patton. There were portions of the field that had not been cut yet at that time. I did go through and document what damage I could there, which consisted of some deer-sized beds, which I'll refer to shortly. As the department's recommendation to deny the $2,800 portion of this claim, the reason for the denial is due to the actions of the claimant. The damage was not investigated by the department. The hay had already been swathed at that point. These are a couple of photos of the swathed hay in the portions that Mr. Patton claimed were damaged. You can see what the windrows produced yourself and make your own judgment from those photos. This is one of the deer-sized beds that I documented in the uncut portions of the same fields. I observed approximately 6 of these beds during my investigation. And from these photos you can see more of the cut fields as well as the swather being operated by Mr. Patton during my investigation. Mr. Patton confirmed that he had harvested the tangled up hay portions of the claimed damaged fields prior to the department's investigation. Upon my arrival, he got out and we walked over and he pointed out those portions which he felt had been damaged by the bedding elk. While I was investigating Mr. Patton's damage claim, he proceeded to harvest the remaining areas. You can see a swather in the background of the photo on the right. From my observations and documentation in the fields, while I observed those tangled and damaged portions, I did not evidence anything related to a loss of hay. So again, it is the department's recommendation to deny the $2,800 portion of this claim. According to damage regulation, Chapter 28, Section 7, reasons for denial of a verified claim, Section AXI. Due to actions of the claimant, the damage was not investigated by the department. And you can read through that paragraph, but I wanted to highlight the first investigation occurred on the 24th of July, 2014, and the reported tangled up hay damaged portions that were reported the day before on the 23rd of those hay fields were already cut by the claimant, Dennis Patton. I was not able to investigate the tangled up hay portions because they had already been cut. I did walk through those portions and photographed what I could for elk sign. That would include elk tracks, pellet piles, and bedding areas as best I could determine. And I did not observe anything out of the ordinary for elk use. Again, looking at Mr. Patton's affidavit, you can see that he also claimed damage due to extra fuel and hours to try to cut the hay that had been bedded in. He ran 2 elk sheds through a swather, and for the repairs and extra time, he's claiming $2,200 in addition to the $2,800 for the loss of hay. Mr. Patton confirmed with myself that there was no damage to his swather as he originally claimed. That was during a phone conversation that occurred on September 9, 2014. At that time, he told me that he had run a couple of elk sheds through a swather, but he did not experience any damage to the machine. Therefore, there's no evidence that Mr. Patton suffered damage that was directly from the actions of the big game. And again, it is the department's recommendation to deny the $2,800 portion of this claim as it is consequential damages, which I'm going to get into that definition here shortly. So according to Chapter 28, Section 2, subsection I, consequential damages means damage, loss, or injury that does not flow directly and immediately from the act of the big game animal, but only from some of the consequences or results of such act. Consequential damages include a number of things, but the ones that actually would be relevant to this situation would be the labor or equipment costs. The damage regulation in Section 2 also does define damage, and it's quite extensive. I won't get into that directly, but the portion that applies under Section J is damage shall not include damage to other real or personal property, including, but not necessarily limited to, motor vehicles and consequential damages. So to summarize damage claim number 15006, Dennis Patton, representing Patton Land and Livestock, submitted a damage claim in the amount of $5,000 for elk damage to growing alfalfa and grass hay, his swather, extra time, and fuel costs. I investigated the damage as claimed by Mr. Patton and determined the following. The $2,200 claim for damage to the swather by the elk sheds and the fuel costs and his time and labor are actually consequential damages and therefore not reimbursable by the department as damage. The $2,800 claimed for damage by elk to his growing alfalfa grass hay could not be investigated as the tangled up hay portions of the field was cut prior to my arrival, and the damage being investigated by Warden Ochterhoff and the uncut bedding area showed no sign of damage. As far as fiscal impacts of the department goes, the department's recommending denial of the claim, so that would be a difference of $5,000 from the claimed amount by Mr. Patton. Again, the recommendation of the department is to deny the claim and to approve the department's recommendation. That ends my presentation, and I would like to refer it to the commissioners for questions.
Questions for Troy?
I guess we don't have any real comparison with the hay being cut and where the damage occurred. So whether the elk cut it or the swather cut it, you couldn't really tell.
Correct, Mr. President, Commissioner Price. According to what I could determine on the ground when I got there, the swather cut portions of the field that Mr. Patton was claiming had been damaged by elk. Those windrows were actually larger than the surrounding windrows.
Okay, thank you. Does Mr. Patton have a comment to make?
I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
Yes. I do.
Hang on just a minute, Mr. Patton. Anything else, Mike?
Yeah, Mr. President. If Mr. Patton had not gone ahead and cut the field, do you have any models that would have suggested to you how to determine damages with the type of damage he was complaining about?
Well, there's a number of tools that we have available to us at this stage in the process, without being able to actually go out and do counts or put up exclosures on that field to estimate damaged portions compared to non-damaged portions. We would have to estimate based on a rough estimate of use by AUMs.
Did you advise Mr. Patton that you needed to look at the damage before he proceeded in cutting the field?
Yes, he's well aware of that regulation, and I believe I did talk to him about that on the phone, but I think at the point he had called me, he had already cut those portions that he was claiming had been damaged.
Okay.
Anything else for Troy? Mr. Patton,
Yes.
do you have any questions for the department?
Well, yes, I do.
Okay.
I mean, I just figured there was no problem when I first went up there to start cutting, you know. But once you start cutting, you saw you got a problem, so I did what I was supposed to do. And I don't understand my actions. I did everything right. I don't think my actions were out of line with what I did. I mean, I'm not going to call the Game and Fish to see if it's all right. I can go up there and cut my fields, you know. But I did this. I might clarify this. By running the 2 elk sheds through my swather, it didn't hurt nothing, you know. In fact, I didn't even know they went through it until I was coming back the next windrow, and I saw the elk sheds, so I just picked them up, you know. But I did have to adjust my swather so I could get down lower and try to pick up this hay that was all twisted up and tangled up from elk. There was elk in there. There's no doubt in my mind that the elk was there because I've seen them in there from May when they come in there. And sure, we had a good year this year, and the hay produced quite well up there. And I can't help that, you know. It's nothing the Game and Fishes can adjust, you know. But after I baled this here stuff, I raked it and then I baled it up. Yes, you could really see that I left quite a lot of hay in the field yet. And I only had 15, 16, maybe 17 acres cut when Troy come up there. So I was just getting started, and there's no use of just stopping and quit cutting, you know. You got to get what you can. So that's about the only thing I got to say. But there, like I say, it took me longer to cut it because you had to go slower trying to pick this stuff up. I mean, it wasn't all tangled up, but you can look from your photos that Troy took that there was just in there, and it wasn't cut like it should have been cut. That's about all I got to say.
Okay, Mr. Patton, does the department have anything they would like to add?
Yes, I would like to add one more thing, Commissioner Clouda. Just to do a little bit of the math based on the claim, Mr. Patton was estimating 4% of the 70 acres had been damaged by the elk. That would equate to 2.8 acres, and he's claiming that damage dollar amount was $2,800. Doing the math on that, that would equate to $1,000 per acre. My wife and I own horses. We recently purchased good quality grass alfalfa hay at $140 a ton, and that does seem to coincide with what the going rate is. So taking that $1,000 per acre divided by $140 per ton, that would equate to 7.1 tons per acre. That's what Mr. Patton is estimating he was getting for a yield. Looking at South Dakota statewide, last year the average production was somewhere about 3.0 tons per acre.
0.3?
3.0.
3.0, okay.
I have a, President Clouda, is this irrigated hay or dry land?
President
Dry land.
Cloud, Commissioner Price, it is dry land.
Dry land, okay.
Anything else for Troy on the rebuttal? Mr. Patton, anything to add?
Well, there's probably a lot, but you probably don't have the time, and I don't have the time to argue this. I know I'm right, and you think you guys are right, so whatever you decide, I'm going to have to accept that, you know. I might not like it, but that's just the way it is.
Okay.
I don't really care for... I'm not an outlaw, you know, but I feel that I am treated as an outlaw. I don't like how I've been treated, Atoll, on this deal. But that's just the way you guys work, so that's fine, you know, whatever you say. I've worked with Game and Fish. I've got a walk-in area. I'm not, and it has cost me money from having the walk-in area because I don't get the hunters now because they don't feel like they want to walk, which is not your fault, not my fault, but I'm very serious about taking it back out, you know, but I probably won't, but that's just how I feel sometimes. So that's about all I got to say.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the department?
Mr. President Cloud, Commissioner Director Talbot, I think it's clear that upon Ward House investigation, the two parts of this claim do not meet the the regulatory provisions of Chapter 32 with regards to consequential damages and an inability for the department to investigate the damages. And so at this time, we still would like to move forward with that. The commission recommend the department recommendation to deny the claim in full at $5,000. Thank you.
Thank you.
President Clotter.
Mr. Price.
I'm going to make the motion to deny the claim. I would like the opportunity to speak after we get into discussion.
Okay. Been moved.
I'd second that.
Moved and seconded.
I can understand Mr. Patton's feelings. The crop's been, stirred up. It's made it difficult for him to work, and probably harder on his machinery. And you get kind of, I know when I run into problems like that, it makes me kind of mad. From the department standpoint, I think they're locked in. Within the laws, the consequential damage, running the elk horns through, we really have no ability to do anything about that. And as far as in regard to the amount of hay that was destroyed, we have no way to measure it or know what that is. And that's my reasoning for that. Mr. Patton, I understand your feelings, but we get kind of locked into some of the stuff we have to do. Thank you.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Any other comments?
Yes. Mr. President, I know Mr. Patton well, and what he says is true. He's not an outlaw. He's much the opposite. He's a good land manager, a good citizen up there. As Charles said, I understand his frustration to some extent, but in keeping with Chapter 32, there's no way that we can vote in his favor on this issue, in my opinion.
Okay.
And Mr. President, let me add my comments. I think, especially those of us who are in the ranching business on the commission and have conflict with elk, see this, or elk or deer or any type of hunted animal. It's a difficult situation. You're frustrated by the extra time you put in to chase them off your fields, by the loss of the hay that you experience. And on the other hand, I've seen Game and Fish go way out of their way to develop bean counting techniques to determine what damage was. And bean counting is, it's an accounting term, but it's where you go in and you really look hard to try to monetize a damage that has been created on a living organism, and it's difficult to do. And the Game and Fish has really tried to figure out ways to do it and to be fair about it. In this case, it's really hard to determine what a damage is, and trying to allocate damage fees appropriately, you have to have a strong foundation of what the damage is, and it just is not. We know there's damage there. We just can't count it and can't monetize it. And I have to go along with Commissioner Price's motion to deny the claim.
Okay, anything else? Call for the question. All those in favor of denying the claim?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Patton,
Yes.
Okay, the commission has denied your claim, and I think it's the next step. You'll be hearing from Deputy Chief Edberg on the next step in this, should you decide to pursue it. So your next communication from the department will be from Deputy Chief Edberg, probably within the next few days.
That is correct, Commissioner. President Cloud, I will be getting with Mr. Patton tomorrow.
Okay, he'll be in contact tomorrow. Is that satisfactory with you?
I won't be around tomorrow.
Mr. Patton, what we'll do then is I will.
I got work to do, and I don't. You guys just don't want to be responsible. I know that. South Dakota, I do know that I got a friend that gets $6,800 a year, and he don't have to put up with all the whatever that I do. But this is fine. I don't have time to dick around with you guys. I got work to do, and I'm sitting in the house right now waiting for the phone call. And whatever, like I say, whatever you guys decide, I don't agree with you, but that's fine. We'll go from there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Patton.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. That concludes the appeal presentation.
Okay. With that, we're going to move to agenda item 15.
Mr. President, members of the Commission, Director Talbot, the Cooperative Fish and Wildlife Research Unit program was established in 1935 to enhance graduate education in wildlife and fishery sciences and to facilitate research between natural resource agencies and the universities. Today there are 40 cooperative research units in 38 states. Each unit is a partnership among U.S. Geological Survey, the State Fish and Wildlife Agency, the university, and the Wildlife Management Institute. The cooperative research units conduct research, participate in the education of graduate students, provide technical assistance and consultation on natural resource issues, and provide continuing education for natural resource professionals. The Wyoming Cooperative Fish and Wildlife Research Unit is the research arm of the Commission and the Department, and we depend on that research to accomplish many of our fish and wildlife management goals and objectives. In order to keep the Commission informed about the co-op unit and specific research projects, the Department and the unit will provide updates to the Commission on a regular basis from this point forward. To initiate this enhanced coordination with the Commission, the Wyoming Co-op Unit leader, Matt Kaufman, is here today to talk about the Wyoming Cooperative Research Unit and their current research priorities and projects. Matt.
Thank you, John. President Clouda, members of the Commission, and Director Talbot, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come before you and tell you a little bit about our program. What I've, we can go ahead and cue up the slides. What I've prepared here is just a broad overview of the type of work that we do, and do I need to? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I have here is just a broad overview. Not going into specific details of individual projects.
There we go.
And this is meant to just provide you with some background about how, what the type of work we do and how we work with the Game and Fish Department. So this is our mission statement. This is the mission statement of every co-op unit in the country: to conduct research on natural resource issues, educate students destined to work in the field of natural resources, and provide technical assistance to our cooperators and clientele. The reason we're referred to as a cooperative unit is because we are made up of four different cooperators. The main ones are here. We're housed at the University of Wyoming. Each of us are faculty in the Zoology and Physiology Department. We are funded, our salaries are paid for by the U.S. Geological Survey, and then the Game and Fish is the third cooperator, and the Game and Fish is essentially our research client. The fourth cooperator, which Deputy Director Kennedy mentioned, is the Wildlife Management Institute. So we are often referred to as the de facto research arm of the Game and Fish Department, and this typically works as a very nice partnership because we have different jobs. So the Game and Fish, the Game and Fish's job is managing Wyoming's fish and wildlife, and that is a very hard job, especially these days with landscapes changing rapidly. Also, the Game and Fish has no or very limited in-house research capacity. Game and Fish does not have, except for with one exception, PhD researchers on its staff. So the co-op unit, our mission is to conduct research to address those priority management needs of the Game and Fish Department, and we kind of strive to do two things. One is to provide better information to the Game and Fish Department about the species that they manage, and then of course we're training masters, graduate students, masters, and PhD level students, and so those students also have to advance the understanding within the fields of fish and wildlife biology. So they have to address novel research questions in addition to helping us understand these systems better. So how do we do this? This is a sketch of how we do it. In reality, it kind of varies year by year, and it varies a bit between Fish Division and Wildlife Division. But this is what we strive for. In the spring or summer, the Game and Fish solicits project ideas from their folks in the field. So this is where the projects originate. And then in the summer, the Game and Fish and the co-op unit staff get together and look at those projects and try to determine which of those make for good graduate student projects. And then from that subset, at that point, they don't have budget, so at that point, the co-op unit faculty design the proposals, flesh them out, add the budgets to them, figure out how much they're going to cost, and then in the fall, the Game and Fish, with consultation from the co-op unit, makes decisions on which projects are going to fund going forward. So this varies also from fish to wildlife. We often use Game and Fish funds as seed money for these projects. Often the research budget that the Game and Fish has is inadequate to fully fund, especially our wildlife projects. So we leverage the Game and Fish funds with many other funders. This is a partial list, and on some of our projects we're tripling or quadrupling the funding that we get for the Game and Fish to do this work. And that varies again from fish to wildlife. Fish projects are more often funded completely by Game and Fish with other sources. And how do we do the work? So these projects are true collaborations, or I should maybe say the best projects that we do are true collaborations. And so throughout the projects, the co-op faculty work closely with the Game and Fish. And so, for example, if we're capturing mule deer in the Wyoming range, which we've been doing for the last 2 years, there's typically 5 or 6 or 8 Game and Fish wardens and biologists, in addition to our students and faculty that are participating on those captures. And that collaboration really starts from the beginning, from the design of the project, from what the information needs is. And then the second one I think is really important, and this is, I think, kind of a hallmark of our program, and that's this rapid flow of data and information. So when we work with the Game and Fish Department or the BLM or the Forest Service, we don't, those management partners don't have to wait until we publish our work and it comes out in a peer-reviewed journal and then they can read the report. We do produce work that way, but as soon as we get information that's useful to the Game and Fish or other partners, we share it with them so that they can learn from these projects sort of in real time. And then when the project's done, there typically aren't surprises. Our Game and Fish collaborators typically are not surprised at what we find or what we claim to, what we report that we found because they've been with us the whole way. And so when projects wrap up and we're reporting our findings, if we're talking to the media, we often do that in a coordinated fashion as well. Another important aspect of our program is that, and this is one of our primary missions, is that we train fish and wildlife professionals. And so, and I think our program, the students that work with us are really lucky because we have such a close collaboration with agency partners. And so, in a lot of cases, and this isn't formalized, but especially with Game and Fish, the biologists often act as what I refer to as agency mentors for our students. So, Commissioner Price, you're familiar with my student Brendan Oates. He works closely with Gary Freilich, who's a biologist. And when these guys get on the ground, a guy like Gary Freilich, the biologist, introduces the student to all the landowners, to the issues, and a lot of the biologists and wardens have a deep understanding and a long history of working in these areas. They have a lot of knowledge to provide to these students, and the students benefit from that greatly. And when they finish their project, they also have a very good understanding of how the Game and Fish works, and also how the BLM works and how the Forest Service works if they've interacted with those managers as well. And consequently, many of our former students are now employed throughout the state by the Game and Fish, by the BLM, NRCS, Forest Service. So we've been a training grounds for many of the fish and wildlife professionals that currently manage Wyoming's fish and wildlife. So this is our staff. In addition to myself, there's Dr. Anna Shalfoon, Dr. Annika Walters, and Dr. Kevin Monteith. And I'm going to briefly touch on the research, the type of research that each of us do. But I want to point out that there is the three of us are funded through the USGS. The Wyoming Co-op unit has always had 3 federally funded biologists, and that's the first 3 you see. Kevin Monteith is a specialist on large mammals that we brought in about 1.5 years ago, and he's in a soft money position. So we don't have enough research capacity, especially in the large mammal area. So we've brought on Kevin to expand our large mammal program to address all the management, research and management issues that we have on big game. And so he's funded exclusively through projects and contracts. But he is also a faculty in the zoology and physiology department. So within large mammal, just touch on a few research themes. And these are driven by the management issues that the game and fish faces with big game. So the influence of predators on ungulate populations, wolves and bears in particular. We still maintain a lot of our long-distance migrations in Wyoming, and the conservation and manage of those is a concern, and that's something that we're actively working on. Another area is consequences of energy development. We, as everybody knows, we develop a lot of energy in Wyoming, and our research program is trying to understand what that means for big game populations and how impacts can be minimized. And then the fourth one there is nutritional carrying capacity. That basically is the idea of trying to understand how many, what size of population, what size of a herd a given habitat can support. It's kind of a fun question in engagement. So in the terrestrial non-game species, so this is the work of Anna Shalfoon. And I should note, historically, the Wyoming Co-op unit didn't have a specific faculty member dedicated to non-game. So many of you know Stan Anderson, Fred Lindsay, when they were in the co-op unit, they both worked on different things. And then when we had we had the opportunity to fill this second wildlife position, the Game and Fish said, boy, non-game species, sensitive species, and keeping those species off the endangered species list is becoming a big deal for us. We'd like this next position to be dedicated for non-game. And so when we searched for and hired Anna Shalfoon several years ago, the search image was someone who would exclusively work on non-game sensitive species issues. And so that's what Anna does. Her research program is basically looking at all of those things that impact sensitive species and things like energy development, the pine beetle outbreak, climate change, and so a lot of her work tries to basically understand, what are some of the things happening on the landscape that make it more difficult for some of these rare or sensitive species to persist, and what might we need to do into the future to keep away from a listing problem with those species. The aquatic program, the fisheries program that Dr. Annika Walters runs, focuses primarily on 3 themes. The first is management and conservation of native fish species. So similar to Anna, there's a lot of native fishes that are of conservation concern, and the Game and Fish is keen on gathering more and better information about especially abundance and distribution of those species. Second one is energy development. For about the last 15 years, we've been working on mule deer and sage grouse and the impacts of energy development, but relatively little work has been done on the impacts of energy development to aquatic systems. And so Annika is starting to do work in this area. And the final one is fish movement dynamics. Managing fisheries populations is a lot about managing connectivity, understanding barriers, understanding where these species spend their life history, and spawning habitats and that type of thing. So fish movement is a large theme in Annika's research program. All right, and then I want to just wrap up with kind of 3 examples of how I think our work can be useful, or when it is most useful to the Game and Fish Department. And so I've sort of titled these last 3 slides, "Better Information Equals Better Decisions." And so the idea here, so we don't get into policy. Our job as researchers is to do this first part, provide better information. When we do a research project, our job is to better understand how these systems work, and then we hand that information off to the Game and Fish, to the BLM, to the Forest Service, to the people whose job is to manage, and the idea is that if we give them better information, they can use that to make better decisions. So here's an example of that, one of the best examples I think from the, or maybe a typical example from the Large Mammal Research Program. This is Doug McWhirter in the upper right there, wildlife biologist out of Cody, and this is the Absaroka, or the Clark's Fork elk herd. It's a little bit washed out, but this is a partially migratory elk herd. There's residents here in the really washed out white dots. The resident population has been growing, can't hunt enough of them. Meanwhile, the migrant population which migrates up into Yellowstone, has been declining. Here's the calf-cow ratios of the migrants. So we have a big recruitment problem of the migrants. Residents are expanding and going gangbusters. Wolves and grizzly bears occupy the migratory range. And so this was sort of the context under which we started this project. Basically, the elk herd that Doug has been managing is lots of things are changing. And one of the outcomes of studying this herd was that we found, again, washed out here, but we found that those migratory animals had really low pregnancy rates. And we also discovered that most of what was influencing those migratory animals was inside Yellowstone National Park, where management wasn't going to be able to affect that. And so the solution, so sort of armed with this information, the solution that Doug and the Cody region folks came up with was switching, moving to a limited quota from a general harvest or general season for the migratory portion of the herd. And so that was a very controversial decision, but in this case, Doug was, because we'd been several years into the project, Doug was sort of armed with much better information to support the decision that they made. I don't have really a specific example with the non-game, but I would point out that the Game and Fish Department has a comprehensive wildlife conservation strategy. This is the state wildlife grants funding from the Fish and Wildlife Service, which is a large funding source, and that requires that the Game and Fish basically keep tabs on all the species of greatest conservation need, and update that list every 5 years. And this is the part of the Game and Fish's goal of keeping sensitive species off the endangered species list. Anna is basically providing the information that helps that helps the Game and Fish do that. So a lot of her work gets fed into the state wildlife action plan. the list of species of greatest conservation need and its revisions every 5 years. And then I'm going to end on this example with burbot, which is outside of my area of expertise. So if anybody in the fisheries division feels like correcting my description, I'm more than welcome to an amendment. But so the problem here is that burbot, which are a species of a major tribal fisheries and a species of conservation concern, were being found in this Pilot Butte Reservoir and in the canal system, in the irrigation system. And so the Game and Fish was concerned that one, that burbot were getting entrained, and that they were coming out of places like Bull Lake and getting entrained in the irrigation system. So one is a cause of mortality, and two, they were concerned when they salvaged those fish, they didn't know where to put them back. And so the question was, where are these fish that are getting into the irrigation system in the canals coming from? Are they coming from Bull Lake, or are they coming from somewhere else? And so what Annika did was a genetic analysis, and the details aren't important here, but basically here's the genetic profile of Bull Lake, here's the genetic profile of Pilot Butte Canal, and what you can see is that they're very different. So this allows Annika to understand that the fish that the Game and Fish are salvaging out of Pilot Butte Reservoir do not originate in Bull Lake. And actually, this led to further surveys which indicated that the most likely explanation is that there's a self-sustaining population of burbot within Pilot Butte Reservoir and the canals. So this helps Game and Fish understand how they should be managing burbot, what they need to do what's the best course of action when they salvage entrained fish. So that's the last example I'm going to end on. And maybe I'll just say, in terms of concluding, the co-op unit has been around since the early 80s. I started here 8 years ago, and I became the unit leader, the director, several years after that. And I've always been impressed at the relationship between the co-op unit and the Game and Fish, and I really feel like I sort of inherited this relationship because it's an incredibly strong relationship. And when I came here, when I started, there were people in Scott Smith's predecessor, actually the predecessor before that, who sort of taught me, what the co-op unit was and how it was supposed to work with the Game and Fish. And it's a really great model, and I've, it's been an honor to try to maintain that relationship. I think it's a really good working model, and we've done a lot of great work together, and hopefully we'll continue to in the future. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Dr. Kaufman, we certainly do appreciate your kind words, but I can tell you that I think your work and the work of your whole unit and what it's meant to the Game and Fish Department and the research side of it is indescribable. I know I hear a lot hanging around places I hang around talking about the co-op unit. So your efforts do not go unnoticed by any means. So thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank you.
Anything else for Dr. Kaufman?
How many students work with you on an annual basis, and how many applications do you receive from students?
So currently, I personally have around, depending how you count them, 5 or 6 graduate students. Some are co-advised. There's about 15 to 20 graduate students in the whole co-op unit. In terms of the students that contact me, so typically when we advertise for a position, we get between 50 or 60 applicants for like a master's level position, and I get about 2 emails a day from prospective students who want to come to Wyoming and work on big game.
Thank you. I was curious how competitive it was.
Yeah, it's extremely competitive.
As it should be.
I'd like to address. Yeah. Dr. Kaufman, I got acquainted with Dr. Kaufman in the Moose Project out there around Daniel. on that. Went out there and watched him wrestle down the moose in the snow about 2 or 3 feet. One of the things that impressed me is how dedicated the students he had were there to work. And I think the information you're getting will be valuable to us now, and probably further down the line, the department will find this information invaluable.
Yeah, President Cloutta, Commissioner Price, I appreciate that comment, and you're absolutely right. We have some of the best students in the country, and it's a privilege to work with them. We ask a lot of them. Our game and fish collaborators ask a lot of them, and they very rarely let us down.
So, thank you. Appreciate
welcome.
your work.
Thanks, Matt.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah, are you here? Okay, can we need to take about a 7 or 8 minute break. Is that a problem? I know we're a little ahead, but we need to take just a couple of minutes. I'll bang the gavel when we're ready to go, but it'll be right at 10 minutes.
Moving right along.
Okay, Chief.
Mr. President, Director Talbot, members of the Commission, we're very privileged today to have a couple of young ladies here to give the Commission an overview on the first and the second, now I think becoming annual Wyoming Women's Antelope Hunt. Today we have Sarah McCants, who's the Executive Director for the Wyoming Women's Foundation, and also Rebecca Smith, who's the Program Coordinator for the same group. And both of these ladies were certainly involved this year and last year in the inaugural Wyoming Women's Antelope Hunt. The department was approached by these ladies as well as others who were interested in this kind of a project, kind of modeled after the two-shot goose hunt, the one-shot antelope hunt here about 2 years ago, I think, is when we first started discussing this. And anyway, thanks to the efforts of these ladies and their team, they executed 2 very successful events, and I thought it would be great for the Commission to be able to hear from them, their perspectives on this kind of new historical event for Wyoming. So with that, Sarah and Rebecca.
Thank you so much. And I just wanted to, Becca's actually going to talk us through this presentation that she's put together for all of you today, but I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank all of you for your support of our annual event. It is going to continue annually. And also to thank the Wyoming Game and Fish Department staff that comes out there. There's a few here today who come out and run some different activities for us and are so instrumental in our event taking place. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank everyone. And with that, we'll turn it over to Becca, our program coordinator, to talk a little bit more about the event.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, the Wyoming Women's Antelope Hunt, as we've already kind of mentioned, began in 2013. And the hunt, just to give you a little background on the Wyoming Women's Foundation, the hunt is a benefit for the Wyoming Women's Foundation, which is a statewide organization that makes grants to other nonprofits in the state that are doing work to carry out our mission. Our mission is investing in economic self-sufficiency of women and opportunities for girls. And so, like I said, we do that through granting in some of our own leadership programs, and now the Antelope Hunt is also part of our mission work. So just to give you a little history on the event, it began because Justice Marilyn Kite, pictured on the left there in the orange, came to us. She and her sister-in-law, Carrie Stebner, who she's standing with, were hunting antelope in around Rollins, and they got to talking about how it would be really neat if there was an antelope hunt just for women in the state, and they started talking to their friends on the right there, Lynn Boomgarden and Donna Witchers, and the idea gained some steam, and they came to the Wyoming Women's Foundation, and they said, would you all be willing to run this event and do it, not just for women, but as a benefit for women too? And so we said, sure, that sounds like a great challenge for us. Now, obviously, we were not a hunting organization, and so we had a lot of work to do to get up to speed on that, and the Game and Fish has been so instrumental in that aspect of things, helping us with, obviously the hunting and the education aspect of things. So as I go through this presentation, you'll see the Game and Fish present throughout, and at the end, as I do an overview of the whole event, and at the end I'll specifically talk about the specifics of everything that the Game and Fish has done for us so far. So the goals of the event, in addition to being a fundraiser, are to set up mentoring situations for women. So what we try to do is pair experienced hunters with brand new hunters or fairly new hunters. They go out and they hunt in pairs, and there's really a lot of organic opportunities for mentoring, such as in this photo on the left here, at the bottom left, where we just happened to have a taxidermist attend at our 2013 hunt, and she had the opportunity to just sort of mentoring on the spot, showing other women how to cape out an antelope. Education is another big goal for us, and that happens in a lot of different ways. Part of it is through the kind of field to fork idea, and teaching women how, not only the skills of hunting and the skills of gutting an animal in the field, but taking it all the way to serving it up at the dinner table. And of course also that involves the type of education that Game and Fish does with respect to safety and ethics and conservation around hunting. So the Game and Fish has certainly been extremely helpful in that aspect of things. Camaraderie is also something that we strive to set up, and that is really done through these hunting pairs. And the hunt takes place at the ranch at Ucross outside of Buffalo here, and we pair women up so that they're staying in rooms with people that they may not have met before, and so they're really kind of developing these new relationships, and then they stay with their hunting partner throughout the weekend until both of them have harvested. The ethical and safe hunting is really underlies our entire weekend, our entire event, and we do that not only through partnering with the Game and Fish, but also through our award structure, which I'll go into a little bit more later in the presentation. And then finally, we use this opportunity to raise awareness about issues of economic self-sufficiency for women and opportunities for girls. And one of the ways that we've done that is to have a governor's proclamation. And this year, Governor Meade attended and signed the proclamation at the event. And this was just a great opportunity for us to talk about women's economic self-sufficiency as well as hunting for women in the state. So just wanted to tell you a little bit about our participants this year. The way that this works as far as getting hunters is that we solicit sponsorships from corporations and individuals. And this year we had 17 of our hunters were chosen by sponsors, and so sponsorships start at $5,000, and the sponsors may pick someone to send for that, a hunter to send for that sponsorship, or some of them choose to sponsor a scholarship. And so we were actually able to offer 12 scholarships this year, and 2 of those, in fact, were due to the generosity of Commissioner Little. She donated one of her commissioner's licenses that we were able to auction off to benefit the event and the Women's Foundation. So additionally, we had other sponsors that did the same, and we were able to offer scholarships through a selection process, an application process. And some of those scholarships were specifically for veterans, and we got the help of the Veterans Commission to get some of those veterans identified that maybe were wounded warriors, and this was a unique opportunity for them to take their combat experience, take their experience with firearms, and turn it into something maybe a little bit more positive than the experience that they had in the past. Just a couple more things about our participants this year. We had 10 first-time hunters, we had 26 residents, and 6 non-residents. With respect to the licenses, we hunt in areas 10, 15, 16, and 17, and as I mentioned, we base our event at the ranch at Ucross, right outside Buffalo here, and the outfitter there, Eric Wilhelm, is also a licensed seller, and so he is able to purchase our licenses for us, for our hunters. And one of the reasons that we chose this location is because there's really a lot of private land in the area. There's tend to be leftover licenses, and Eric and Vicki have a really good relationship with a lot of the landowners, and so they have the ability to get our hunters on those properties. So this year it was a little bit of a challenge because some of the quotas in those areas were reduced, but we were still able to purchase Type 1 antelope licenses for all of our hunters. And we had 32 hunters, 30 of them harvested this year. The 2 that didn't harvest, one of them was just fine with it. It was actually Justice Kite, and she had a really great time mentoring other hunters and had a really great hunt. So she was happy. And then the other hunter was not quite so happy, but it's a pretty good success rate, I think. So like I said, the hunters are paired with guides, two hunters to one guide, and these guides take them out on land that they're, for the most part, pretty familiar with. So it's really a great experience for them. Here's just a couple of pictures of some of our harvests.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a pretty big one. This one is kind of interesting, how the drop horn. And then this hunter, her name is Ashley Lundvall, and she is Miss Wheelchair USA and also Miss Wheelchair Wyoming. And she was one of our special guests this year. She's an incredibly inspirational speaker. And this brings me to the fact that we have some evening programs each day of the hunt. So the hunt starts on a Thursday afternoon and then runs through Sunday morning. And so Ashley was our speaker on Thursday night, and she kind of kicked off the event with telling her story and just really kind of inspiring everyone to be their best and to overcome adversity. So she had a specialized wheelchair that had tracks on it. She's not in it in this picture, but and she had her husband as her assistant, and they went out and they got an antelope, and she dragged it back with her chair, which was pretty cool. Everyone was kind of jealous that she had that capability. So along with our evening presentation, the awards that I talked about earlier, these are the awards that we offer. The Diana Award is for it's the goddess of the hunt, and it's first-time hunters who harvest. Like I said, we had 10 first-time hunters this year, and all of them harvested. The Teddy Roosevelt Award is sponsored by the Boone and Crockett Club, and this is for the most determined and the most determined hunter out there who has to overcome adversity. And it's voted on by the guides, and so all the guides get together after the hunt, and they say, they compare notes as to how their hunt went, and what their what their hunters were like, and it's really kind of a neat moment when the guides get to select that recipient. The super stalker is the woman who has the closest kill shot. This year it was, I believe, 40 yards. The Annie Oakley Award goes to all women who harvest in one shot, and then the team award goes to the team that has the closest average shot. This year that team was sponsored by Merlin Ranch, right outside of Buffalo here, and I think their average shot was less than 100 yards, I believe. So just a word about how the awards speak to the ethics that we're trying to promote with the hunt. The Teddy Roosevelt Award, like I said, is sponsored by the Boone and Crockett Club, and the Boone and Crockett Club has helped us develop their criteria for it, and so that's a really helpful thing because, of course, they're such experts in the area. But the idea behind the Super Stalker is that we're really encouraging the most ethical shot, and so the closer you get, the better shot you're probably going to have. And the One Shot Award is also helps that ethic, because obviously if you take the animal in one shot, that's going to be the cleanest kill for the animal. And so we notice that we don't really put an emphasis on the timing. It's not a race. It's more about the experience and getting the best possible shot. Here's just a couple pictures of our award recipients. These are the Diana Award winners, our first-time hunters. And here's the winning team. And then the activities that we offer, once you've harvested your antelope, then there's some other things to do throughout the weekend to keep you busy and to give you a little bit more education and experience. So fly fishing is offered through Joey's Fly Fishing Foundation, which is in Sheridan. He comes out with a couple of his fishing guides, and they take anybody out who's interested in learning that. Trap and Skeet with the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. Jim Dawson sets up the stands, and he provides all the equipment, and I tried it for the first time this year, and it was a wonderful experience, and he had quite a great team out there helping us out with that. This year we also increased our meat processing aspect of the event. So last year we had a demonstration that was about a 2-hour demonstration for butchering an antelope, And it was not a hands-on thing. It was just kind of a demonstration, watch and see. And this year we had feedback after last year that people maybe wanted it a little bit more in-depth. And so what we did is we had Walt and Kim Gasson. Walt is a retired Game and Fish employee. You all probably know him. Worked for the Game and Fish for 30 years. And the Wyoming Wildlife Federation sent out a volunteer as well. His name was Richard O'Black out of Cheyenne. And what they did is they pretty much did a one-on-one with anyone who wanted to process their antelope there on the spot. So we had about a fourth of our hunters did that and went home with their meat all packaged and ready. And then to complete this field to fork concept, we had a cooking demonstration with Beth Worthen and Kim Gasson, and they cooked up some tasty antelope tenderloin, a tasty antelope tenderloin dish for us. I just want to get into some of the specifics about the Wyoming Game and Fish Department's role. So because some of our hunters are first-time hunters, not everyone has hunter education coming into it, and the Game and Fish has quite generously offered to work with us on offering hunter education internet field day right before our hunt. And so Jim Dawson offered the class on the Wednesday night before our hunt that started on Thursday. And this year we had one hunter education student go through that. Last year we had two. And in fact, here she is getting her patch and her hunter education card. And this was our youngest hunter. She's 16 years old. And so that was kind of a special thing for us. She's the youngest hunter we've had so far. It just so happened she was also the first one to harvest her antelope throughout the weekend, and the governor took notice of her and had his picture taken with her. And then the Game and Fish also kicks off the event on Thursday. Joe Gilbert came from the Game and Fish to do a safety meeting, a safety welcome meeting, and he talked about, reviewed the regulations, for, which is great for new hunters as well as for the seasoned hunters, to just remind them what they need to do with their license and all the safety aspects of it. And then everyone proceeds to the local rifle range there, the U-Cross rifle range, and they carefully, take everyone through sighting in their rifle. Now, some of them actually borrow rifles. We had loaner rifles from Thompson Center this year, and so Jim Dawson handles handing out the loaner rifles for us as well. So I just kind of wanted to highlight some of the Game and Fish staff that were there. With Joe and Jim. There's our range. We had Al Langston, Tasha Sorensen, Justina Bickford. And then here's just kind of an overview of everything that the Game and Fish did for us, and hopefully I haven't missed anything, but they offered the hunter education. They also coordinated we had a few people that didn't have hunter education that did the hunter mentor program that used that. They helped us coordinate that for those hunters. They gave us a safety talk, the welcome, and the review of regulations. They coordinate the sight-in entirely, including the loaner rifles, the trap and skeet education, equipment, coordination. Jim Dawson even stores our ammo for us. And then they also, Tasha and Tristana went out with hunters and helped mentor hunters in the field, which was really, really great for some of the new hunters to have that along with them. And then simply maintaining a presence throughout the weekend is super important. Just to have that confidence that we have the Game and Fish there is really great. I'll just show you a few more photos from the 2014 hunt. Just kind of some highlights. You see some of the hunting pairs here. Kind of some, some mishaps along the way occasionally. These two ladies got one shot. That's the whole group at the end of the weekend. And there's the Game and Fish. Now, I just have one more thing to show you. In 2013, we had a videographer from the Game and Fish there, and she put together an excellent video that I'd like to share with you all today. And you're going to notice quite a contrast in the weather. Everybody's kind of wearing short sleeves and everything this time. Well, not so much last year. We had As Director Talbot will remember, he was stuck at our event because all the roads were closed due to snow. So I'll take questions after the video. Thanks.
I'm excited to be out here. This is amazing. I accomplished my goal.
So either way, you know what the one thing is?
The mission of the Women's Foundation is economic self-sufficiency for women and girls in Wyoming. The sheer act of simply of putting meat on the table is a wonderful way for women to be economically self-sufficient.
Was you want some more instruction, that's great as well. It's all about having a good time. Safety is paramount.
So do you see when you do your
Pretty fun, pretty cold, pretty windy, but great guys. Lots and lots of animals. You want to stay out of the I never dreamed that I would be going on the hunt.
Yes. Becca, not in the form of a question, but I think it's safe to say probably, watching or hearing about the last 2 years, of this event, that it's probably long overdue, and you guys should be commended for putting this together and the way you put it together, and the success that you've had with it in the 2 years that you've done it. It's going to do nothing but grow. My only comment was, I did have a question, and then it was answered in your presentation. But if you had any youth hunters, and you did, and it's too bad this morning that you weren't here when Jim Dawson was here with the Wyoming. Hang on a minute, the Wyoming Hunter Youth Challenge Team, or the Young Guns. Have you heard about them?
He was telling me about them.
Went back to Pennsylvania for the International Youth Hunter Challenge, and a lot of young ladies in that. So it was really exciting to see that you've got the ability to grasp some of those young ladies, since there isn't a day, once again, that doesn't go by that there isn't a discussion about how important it is to get the youth involved in this, to carry on the heritage that we all seem to enjoy at one time or another in our lives. So good on you guys. Excellent.
Appreciate it.
Anything else, Rebecca?
I have a question. Do you hunt? Do you hunt yourself?
Oh, that's a great question. I had always wanted to hunt, and when the event was finished last year, I was excited for all the new hunters that had gotten to live that dream for the first time, and then I thought, well, I still haven't hunted. And so I talked to the ranch manager there, and he took me out, and I got my first antelope last year.
Good. Got another convert.
Anything else, Rebecca?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. I have some brochures and pamphlets that I'll leave at the front table here, and you all can pick them up at a break. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. See you next year, maybe, huh? Rick, I guess you're the fellow we're looking for.
Good afternoon, President Clouda, Commissioners, Director Talbot. I'm just going to give a short presentation on the Lander RMP revision that, as you can see, has gone on for a long time. The Lander RMP revision, or the Resource Management Plan, began in April 2007, and the record of decision and final environmental impact statement was finally signed in June of 2014. It was a very long 7 years. Lander RMP provides directions for managing 2.4 million acres of BLM managed federal surface estate lands and approximately 2.8 million acres of federal mineral estate lands. The RMP boundary or Lander field office is located in Fremont, Natrona, Sweetwater, Carbon, and Hot Springs counties. Here's a map. The white area in the middle there is the Wind River Reservation. So that gives you kind of an idea where the Lander field office and what this management plan controls. It is the first of the BLM resource management plans to address management of important greater sage grouse habitat. The RMP protects congressionally designated scenic and historic trails and establishes BLM's first master leasing plan to balance development of energy resources while protecting biologically important lands and natural areas. The revised RMP designated approximately 172,000 acres unavailable to oil and gas leasing, while at the same time protecting approximately 1.2 million acres as no surface occupancy to protect recreational values, sage grouse, big game habitat, and congressional designated scenic trails and historic trails. The area up by Du Bois there is unavailable. The dark brown is the NSO, non-surface occupancy. The other areas is either by standard stipulations or controlled surface use, which is like timing steps, and the light yellow there is just normal, just standard leasing stipulations through the federal BLM. In exchange for the 1.1 million acres of NSO, the plan designated 365,000 acres as designated development areas. Within the boundaries of the DDAs, timing steps will not be applied unless required by federal law or the BLM identifies site-specific real-time need for the stipulation. This includes DDAs that are located in big game crucial winter ranges. And again, this is washed out. The areas that are really is Lysite area, Beaver Rim, and part of this area here. And if you know this area, these areas are already heavily developed by oil and gas development. So this was the exchange, is that here was an area that, you know, a lot of our guys, you know, in the field saying, it's a parking lot. A lot of the values there for wildlife, the habitat for wildlife are gone. So we provided an area or a thought that do we want to think about something else that will begin to think to start protecting long-term the big game crucial winter range? Because over the last 10 years, and this is my 6th RMP I've worked on, is that big game crucial winter timing steps is not protecting the habitat. It's modifications, a lot of the animals there. But during outside of the big game, the area can be developed. So you can come back and all of a sudden part of your refrigerator is gone. That's the only refrigerator you have for 6 months. So during this process, the state and local agencies, along with Game and Fish, negotiated to protect the crucial habitat by limiting disturbance and fragmentation of the habitat with the NSO. Is our habitat protections thought is NSO is one of the best ways to protect the big game crucial winter range habitat. But however, with increase in NSO designation, the BLM offsets that this protection with a reduction of other types of wildlife timing steps within the field office. It has been the department's goal to balance those two management objectives. Lander Field Office is unique because that NSO area currently has been designated as none, very low, or low conventional oil and gas development potential. However, within that NSO, the BLM can still allow geophysical exploration, and the BLM can lease the NSO for oil and gas development. However, they just can't put anything on the surface. So they could be around the edges and do directional or horizontal drilling to access some of the reserves. And if the oil and gas is discovered with the NSO boundaries, the RMP can be amended to allow development of that resource. Where this is important is currently a lot of times outside of areas, you know, you have one well or a pad goes in, and the next year another pad goes in, and the next year another pad within a section. Pretty soon the area has a bunch of pads, but there's been no environmental analysis with that development. In order for an RMP to be amended, a NEPA document needs to be completed, usually an EIS. So if they remove the NSO, then we can get mitigation to allow that development instead of all of a sudden we got a whole bunch of acres disturbed, and then the BLM decides, well, we'll do a NEPA analysis of development and how it may impact all the resources near that. So it's not locked in to be an NSO. So if somehow, you know, during geophysical they can find a reserve, they can develop it, but they will do it more responsibly, and we get to have a say in how they develop that reserve. We also, the RMP designate 8 wilderness study areas. Areas around the Sweetwater Complex, the Sweetwater Canyon, Whiskey Mountain, Copper Mountain, and the Du Bois Badlands. And here's just areas somewhere up in the Du Bois, areas around the Sweetwater Canyon there, and the Sweetwater Rocks, and areas south there in the Sweetwater Canyon area. The revised RMP also designated 7 areas of critical environmental concerns, or ACECs. These includes Lander Slope, Red Canyon, Whiskey Mountain, Beaver Rim, East Fork, Green Mountain, South Pass, and Twin Creeks. Out of those 7, 5 are for wildlife ACECs that has additional protections for wildlife. And that's just a brief map of where all the ACECs are. The plan also has right-of-way designated corridors and communication sites. The designated corridors will allow new pipelines and transmission lines to be constructed through the field office with minimal environmental review. And those are the green lines. Essentially, since it's a designated corridor, project proponent will probably only need to do a quick environmental assessment. If a project proponent wishes to go outside of the corridors, minimally it will be an environmental impact statement, which could take anywhere from 3 to 5 years, and maybe even RMP amendment for that corridor to go through. And this is important to especially with the governor's CO2 initiative to get especially get it up into Bighorn Basin around Cody and Worland. This will allow that CO2 to get to move it into the areas and also over into Midwest and Anadarko's field, and allow products to get out of the DDAs, which are the north there. Overall, the revised Lander RMP has done an excellent job of balancing protecting wildlife while allowing development of oil and gas, which is important to the state. The department would like to thank the Lander Department personnel, as well as the local county and state cooperators for their hard work. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to entertain them.
Questions for Rick?
So when do you start the next revision?
I am currently working on the Rock Springs RMP, and it's been slowed down by the sage grouse and the 9 plan. We are planning, in fact, the field guys, they like this idea of designating some areas as NSO, protecting their best of the best of the habitat, and maybe releasing some where there's already heavy development, or in the checkerboard, where it doesn't really make sense to have protection when they can go a mile away or right across the border and have, go ahead and disturb the area. That will be finished up here this week, the final boundaries. Once that is done, I'm going to be presenting it to the Wildlife Division and the director to make sure, are you on board with this thought process and this concept? Governor's office, just bring him up to speed. I've had some communications with the county commissioners and give them on board because they're reluctant to do this, understandably. And just give them heads up. What it is, it will be an alternative to the RMP to be considered and be analyzed. And this, let them know this is what our thoughts are. We are asking for increased NSO. However, we are willing to give up some big game groups timing steps in the Rock Springs revision. So, and then get out to the NGOs and then to the BLM. Because it is on hold right now until the sage grouse issue is resolved with the 9 plan. There's no sense to go further with any revisions when it can be changed, which means another environmental analysis, which could be 2 or 3 years out.
Anything else for Rick?
What's the time frame for this RMP? Does it have an expiration date? Or?
President Clouda, Commissioner Culver, they're usually about 20 years. And it's very difficult to change it. And the only time that you can designate an NSO unavailable is during an RMP revision. It's a land allocation. So you ask for a revision, which takes time, and they're done. I mean, we're going through 3 revisions on 2 different RMPs right now. One's in the Rollins RMP. They're revising it to protect some water resources for the town of Rollins. The other one is in the Casper RMP. They're proposing to increase oil and gas development in Converse County alone by 5,000 wells. And they have to do an RMP amendment. So they're doing it. What you can do is you can do the EIS, environmental impact statement, at the same time you can do the revision. So they're together. So they can be done, but it's usually 3 to 5 years before that can occur.
Wow. Anything else for Rick? Well, good job.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Wow. We have no blue slips up here. Is there anybody from the audience that would like to address us on any topic relating to game and fish matters? With that, we're adjourned until January in Cheyenne. So